Welcome back, everybody, to the Bearded Bible. Here we are. We are in day number 33 and 34, if you're following along in the YouVersion Bible app. We are, of course, in day 22, covering one chapter a day, covering the New Testament in a year in the John Maxwell Leadership Study Bible. Today, we've got a great one of the 21 laws of leadership, the law of solid ground, that we're going to start with to give us some context for our reading. And we're going to be able to see these scriptures through the leadership lens. This is one today that I imagine you're going to get some value out of, and it may be one of the strongest things to send to somebody, whether they're a Christian or not, a Bible reader or not, who's in a leadership predicament right now, where there's some hostility around them and some difficult characters they've got to deal with. When seeing how Jesus dealt with his detractors, may be one of the best tools for that person. You could just forward this episode to them. The law of solid ground, Jesus' character. So we're starting with the leadership call out, and then we're going to get into the reading. Each time Jesus faces some leadership test, he proves his integrity by handling the situation expertly. Now, out of this chapter, the first example is the Pharisees attempt to trap him with the tax issue. Should the Jews pay taxes to Caesar? Either expected answer would get Jesus in trouble either with the Romans or with the Jews. So Jesus answered the question with a question. He asked for a coin, then says, "Whose image is this and whose inscription?" The coin carried Caesar's image, so it should be surrendered to him. But the people were made in God's image, so they should surrender themselves to him. Number 2, the Sadducees attempt to trap him with the marriage issue. If a woman lost several husbands to premature death, whose wife would she be in heaven? Jesus explains there is no marriage in heaven, so it is a moot point. But then he poses his own question, proving from their own scriptures the existence of both resurrection and a heaven. Number 3, the Pharisees attempt to ask him an unanswerable question. What was the greatest commandment? Surely Jesus wouldn't want to leave out any. Jesus summarizes the law with a single command: love God and your neighbor. Then he poses an unanswerable question of his own, proving he knew the scriptures better than they did. So let's jump right in to chapter 22 inside Matthew. We hope you guys are following along. And don't forget as we get into this, because I'm just going to end when I'm complete with this one. If you get any ahas, some big bright ideas, or just a feeling, comment it below. Makes a huge difference to this little fledgling channel. The parable of the wedding banquet. Jesus spoke to them again in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his servants to those who had been invited to the banquet to tell them to come, but they refused to come. Then he sent some more servants and said, 'Tell those who have been invited that I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fattened cattle have been butchered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet.' But they paid no attention and went off, one to his field, another to his business. The rest seized his servants, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged. He sent his army and destroyed those murderers and burned their city. Then he said to his servants, 'The wedding banquet is ready, but those I invited did not deserve to come. So go to the street corners and invite to the banquet anyone you find.' So the servants went out into the streets and gathered all the people they could find, the bad as well as the good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came to see what the guests, he noticed a man there who was not wearing his wedding clothes. He asked, 'How did you get in here without wedding clothes, friends?' The man was speechless. Then the king told the attendants, 'Tie him hand and foot and throw him outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are invited, but few are chosen.'" Paying the imperial tax to Caesar. Then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap him in his words. They sent their disciples to him, along with the Herodians. "Teacher," they asked, "we know that you are a man of integrity, and you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by others because you paid no attention to who they are. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not?" But Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, "You hypocrites! Why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax." They brought him a denarius. And he asked them, "Whose image is this, and whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Then he said to them, "So give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." When they heard this, they were amazed. So they left him and went away. Marriage at the resurrection. That same day, the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to him with a question. "Teacher," they said, "Moses told us that if a man dies without having children, his brother must marry the widow and raise offspring for him. Now there were 7 brothers among us. The first one married and died, and since he had no children, he left his wife to his brother. The same thing happened to the second and the third brother, right on down to the 7th. Finally, the woman died. Now at the resurrection, whose wife will she be of the 7, since all of them were married to her?" Jesus replied, "You are in error, because you do not know the Scriptures or the power of God. At the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like angels in heaven. But about the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what God said to you? I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living." When the crowds heard this, they were astonished at his teaching. The greatest commandment. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question. "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments." Whose son is the Messiah? While the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them, "What do you think about the Messiah? Whose son is he?" "The son of David," they replied. He said to them, "How is it then that David, speaking by the Spirit, calls him Lord? For he says, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet.' If David calls him Lord, how can he be his son?" No one could say a word in reply, and from that day on, no one dared to ask him any more questions. So with that, don't forget to like, comment, reply, share this episode with somebody that you care about. And if this episode got shared with you, just know that the person that sent it to you thought that these words might be meaningful to you. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.